Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
On Joe at RT.ie. Upshot, Joe. Be very careful with information on how DNA and where it's got is used. And instead of possibly gaining one half sister, I've now lost one that I had for my lifetime. Tom, good afternoon.
Hello, Joe.
This is an incredible story. What happened? It's off the back of the stories we've been doing recently where people are going onto these websites with their DNA and you're told you have a contact or a very close relative in AB. You don't get the name or address, but you can go off and do Facebook yourself, which happened last week. And the reunion was joyous. Two half-sisters who obviously shared the same father, both 60, 72, didn't realise it and only met for the first time last week. Now, your father was wrongly identified as fathering another child. Tell us, Tom.
That's correct, Joe. This happened 4 years ago, and a series of documents was landed into my lap, which I read with shock, really, because it purported that my father had another child back in the 40s.
Oh, God. Okay.
And it kind of tainted our memories, I suppose, in a sense. But
and do you remember your reaction when you got this letter or this note saying, I believe your father is my father?
Oh, I was devastated. I burst out crying, and my wife was opposite me, but she didn't know what I was reading and didn't know what was in the documents, and she thought it could have been something to do with myself or whatever, but it was horrendous. I'm one of a big family, and the information was passed around. I would say a lot of my other family would be older than me, and they might have just accepted maybe what was there and whatever, but I just couldn't accept it. And I did my own investigation into it.
And the reason this person was through one of these DNA websites? That's
correct, yeah. She had put her information up on Ancestry.com, I think.
Okay.
And this led to a match. Now, I'm not 100% familiar with it, Joe, and after my experience of it, I don't think I'll ever bother anyway. She got a match from somebody in America. And when she followed up their family tree, which was actually an Italian family, an uncle of mine name popped up, and then his family tree came up, and my father's name was mentioned. And when she saw my father's name, she said, "That's him." She said, "That's the man I'm looking for 70 years."
And was she overjoyed, so to speak?
Well, she was thrilled. She was thrilled.
Okay.
As far as she was concerned, she found what she was looking for her lifetime, and I totally agree with her. And if I was in the same position, I would be as joyous as what she was.
But did you believe?
I didn't know what to believe, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
No, and where I was, the thing that irked me really, Joe, is that this woman made contact with my relations in America, and they passed on information of my father to this lady without her knowledge or without her permission. And I found that, distasteful. I would have expected more from my own relations, but that didn't happen. So by the time it landed in my lap, I was 3 or 4 paces removed from where it actually was starting.
Yeah, but it was directly affecting you and your family. They were saying your father had told a lie, lived a lie.
They did, but on investigation, when we look back at the date and the times or whatever, if it had been my father, I don't think he would have even have known it, It's not that he disowned this child or anything like that, but I don't think he would have known.
Well, that was the case last week with the Oates family. They believed their father did not know that somebody had a liaison with, became pregnant with him, but they believe he's unaware of it. Now, they were all happy. Were all of your family happy with this news, or?
No, not at all. Not at all. As I say, some of my family don't like to discuss these things, and they say,
I
look,
understand.
okay, that happened, and we'll leave it go. I'm of a different generation, and I suppose I will be quite like my father in the sense that he was a very measured and cautious man, and he wouldn't just take things on face value. He'd have to know what's the substance behind it and where did it come from, and and only then he might come round to believe it. So maybe I got those genes from him.
And then how did you discover that it wasn't your dad?
Well, I made contact with this woman, and I explained to her who I was and the connection that was after being unravelled. I gave a brief detail of me and my family and my circumstances. I just said, look, it came as a shock and out of the blue, and I just asked, would she mind if we went down the route of a DNA test between the two of us to confirm or deny?
Okay, well
whatever.
done. Yeah, well done. That was...
And I thought that was the only way that definitively we could say one way or the other. Now, in fairness to this woman, she agreed to it.
Okay.
And we both took the test, and it was a bit of an anxious wait until the results came back. Mm-hmm. And when the results came back, I was quite surprised because, having gone over the story, I had an inclination possibly to believe it or that it could have happened.
Okay.
But when the results came back, they were so definitive, Joe, that for me there couldn't be anything in my favour. So,
your dad's? Well, yeah.
We were asked.
And how did you know that woman would accept the DNA results?
Well, I presume when she agreed to do the test, she would have known the purpose of it, and I think she was doing it more to please me, so that I could. Okay,
but she went along. She did. But did she contest when it was obvious that you did not share a father? Did she contest and say, "Can I have a second opinion"?
She didn't accept the result. She kind of questioned the methodology of the test that we had done, and she said it was my right not to accept it, but it was also her right to accept or not to accept the results. It was my right to accept them.
So where did that leave us?
So that left us in the position that she was going to continue to say that my father was her father, and
did you convey these results to the rest of your family?
I did.
And how did they react?
Most of them accepted them. Now, I'd have to say, no, Joe, this wasn't, I don't know, we have quite a big family, so we don't meet regularly for meetings or anything.
Okay, I understand, like that.
Yeah. But the results were passed on. Mm-hmm. And most of them accepted them and said, look, well, that's fair enough. The truth is out there now.
Daddy is not the father.
Yeah. And except one sibling decided that she didn't really accept the results of the test either, and she had been in contact with this woman in England as well, and she wasn't going to accept the results, and she said she kind of believed the story, and that was it. So
and did she feel your extended family, not you, were being unfair to the woman in disbelieving her?
Not that we were being unfair, but maybe she was a bit over sympathetic to this other lady, that she was looking for her father, and 2 and 2 maybe made 5 instead of making 4, and she kind of.
Okay, so how did you eventually, because you did, how did you eventually convince this other woman that you didn't share the same daddy?
Well, I didn't convince her, Joe, other than that the results were there. She chose not to accept them. I choose to accept them. And that was it. When my sister said that she wasn't going to accept the results either, I said, well.
So how did you discover the cousin scenario?
As I said, this all started 4 years ago, Joe, and things were left we're left there at that. As far as I was concerned, I concluded what I had set out to do,
Okay.
and that was it. And I was happy enough that
closed, yeah.
I had proved whatever I wanted to prove, and I was leaving it at that. Until April of this year, I got a further email from this lady,
Right.
and she was full of apologies to me and to my family, and she was wanting now to say that my father was not now her father. And through further investigations that she did on Ancestry.com,
Right.
she got other matches, and when she queried these other matches, more results or more connections came up for her.
Okay.
And it transpired that there was another man in England around this time, and he was using my father's name.
Wow.
Now, there's a connection with them in that they had been cousins, and I suppose back along the 40s, toward the 30s or the 20s, some people reared their brother's children or their whatever. I'm only assuming this because I don't know.
Phenomenon in Ireland, place.
And at some times he was using his own name, and at some time he was using my father's name, and that's all that woman had to go on all along. All those
was
years.
your father's name, even though it wasn't, even though it was not your father. It was somebody using your dad's name.
That's right.
Who was
correct.
related or distantly related, which has happened. Wow.
And
okay, so that's pretty conclusive now.
And the connections, I presume, if he was related to my father, there would have been some connection in DNA somewhere along the line, and maybe that's what popped up.
And so there, it's pretty conclusive now. What did your family, the rest of your family now say, who were slightly disbelieving, are very, very compassionate about this woman in England?
Yeah. Well, me being me, Joe, I had to send another letter to my siblings, just outlining from start
the
to
confusion.
finish how things had went.
Yeah.
And I said I had no axe to grind with anyone, but these were the facts as I saw it, because I was the instigator. Not the instigator originally, but I was the instigator of getting this test done and that. And I put all the facts out there, and I said, look, it's conclusive now.
Yeah.
This woman came back, apologised profusely. Most of my family accepted it, except my sister, who hadn't accepted it. And she just said to me, well, you know, I believe the story, and that was it. No apologies or no...
Okay, and are you still in touch with your sister?
No. Okay. No, we haven't been. We haven't been for 4 years.
How do you think, because of this?
Oh, because of this, yeah. And I thought this would have been...
conclusive,
the
yeah, but it's
would have come...
And how do you think your father would have reacted if he had someone landed on his door and said, when he was alive, which could have happened?
Yeah, he was, as I say, he was very measured and cautious, Joe, and he would have had to... It would have to be proved to him. No, none of us know what happened in our parents' generation when they were younger.
But he would know. But he would know definitively whether he had a relationship with this woman's mother.
Yeah, he probably would.
So he would be able to say, as it happened, deny it, because he didn't. There was another man who did, who was using your dad's name, and you're using your dad's breed and generation because they were related. Stay there for a sec, Tom. Kathleen Shute is Carrick. This is another story through DNA, but it's a good news story. Kathleen.
Hiya, Joe. Are you well?
Yeah, tell us. Great, in Carrick Macross. Go ahead, Kathleen. You're watching the telly. You saw the ad. Do you want your DNA? And what happened?
Well, I had found my mother about 6 years before that. Her name was, I was adopted.
Okay.
And people would say to me, oh, God, you never looked for your dad, did you? And I said, well, he turned up, kind of. I knew in the 50s, 56, that era that he probably was local, That was the feeling I had anyway. So these ads kept coming up, but they were on the phone, they were on the telly, and I said, God, I got a gut feeling that I needed to do this,
Okay.
And I done it online, sent away for the thing, and the next thing, a few days or maybe a week or two later.
You send them your saliva, don't you?
Yeah,
your spit.
You just put into it, and you just read the instructions and do it, and put back in the envelope. And when I was putting it into the envelope, I just thought I put a wee drop of holy water in it, you do, and I said, so maybe my dad turn up here, laughing to myself.
What did you do with the holy water?
I put a wee drop of holy water on the envelope.
Oh, on the other, not on your saliva now.
No, jeez, no.
No, okay, sorry, I got mixed. Okay, so you put a wee drop of holy water in the envelope and I hope that you might find your dad.
Yeah, and I said, sure, maybe my dad will turn up here, laughing kind of to myself, but half serious at the same time.
Okay.
And the next thing, a few weeks later, I got a wee email from them to say, your results are in, congrats, and whatever.
Okay.
And there was 5 second cousins on it.
Right. Where were they?
Well, the first one was Joan, and she was in America.
Okay.
There's a lot good people, mostly in America, I think. But anyway, I emailed her, contacted her, and we kept, and she got in touch right away, and we kept in touch. And, I hadn't a clue about this. I didn't know one end of it from the other.
And how did you track her down?
I emailed her. You can email them to the thing, So she got back to me right away. Right. And we were about 6 weeks communicating and thinking, what the hell is this? Why would some of my people go, anyone belonging to me, go to America? I thought, wouldn't happen. But anyway, I discovered that through talking to her that her grandparents were from the Shanton area of Monaghan, down in Castlebane area. And that was from where my mother was from,
okay.
And I still kind of thought maybe that's her, my mum's relations, could have been. And it's when different things came up and it clicked with me then, Jesus, this has to be.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was, her grandparents were my father's people.
Okay, so...
And my father discovered that my father and my mother lived a field apart.
So you found your dad and your mum. You knew your mother.
Yeah, but they were both dead now. They're not alive.
Okay, I understand that,
never missed, yeah.
But you found your dad through the DNA.
Yeah. And I found, yeah.
And
I found that they lived a field apart, and now they're a grave apart. There's a grave between them now, Blow and Lahagish.
I don't believe you.
Yeah,
and Kathleen, and is it acknowledged? Did they both go on to live separate lives? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if my dad ever knew about me, as a lot of people have said. I don't know any about it. I have no idea what happened. I just, I was.
So did your mother marry someone else, or
no? She never married. I lived with her in Castlepollard for 3 years. And she went on to live. She lived in Dublin.
In the home in Castlepollard.
Yeah, the mother and baby home in Castlepollard.
Yeah. Okay, and then she went to Dublin. Where did she go then?
She lived in Fitzroy Avenue in Dublin.
All right.
And I lived 10 minutes away from her when I was in college. I was studying in Calbrew Street in the 70s, and
did you know that?
10 minutes. I didn't know. She died the following year in 1976.
And did you ever meet her?
Never met her.
So what age were you when you were last with her?
I was 3.
And then you were adopted?
Adopted out, yeah.
And your dad, what do you know about him?
I know he had a farm, he lived down beside her, and I don't know if he ever knew of my existence, I don't know. Because when my mother got pregnant, she was in her late 20s, she was sent off by her father or her brothers or whoever to Castlepollard, and that was the end of that. She never got back until she was being buried.
And do you know if your dad had other children? He must have.
No, he has none that I know of. Okay. None that I.
And what's it like having discovered your parents? When did you discover they were buried one grave apart?
It's only about 2-3 years ago I discovered that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I discovered my
mother's... The hairs would be standing on the back of your neck.
Yeah, I mean, I looked for his grave for a long time when I heard about him, when I knew his name, Yeah. And then suddenly discovered with the help of a friend that he was there, just the grave beside my mother. So last Christmas I was down at the graves. And there was some of Charlie's family put holly on his grave, and I had none with berries on it. So I took a wee bit of his and gave it to and put on my mother's grave. And I thought, God, isn't that lovely to be able to share this now with the two of them?
What a story. And are you still in touch with your American relatives?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, I was over, and she was over here as well, yeah.
Oh, magic, okay. And she was the key to unravel. There's an awful lot of stories like that, Kathleen.
Yeah, but I was just saying DNA is fantastic for anyone who is adopted or needs to know.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
There's no point in... You can't... you can find it there if you look. Yeah. Somewhere or other.
Do you think... Who chose the two graves, I wonder?
Who chose it? Well, they're both buried in their family graves.
Ah, okay. So it's just coincidence.
My mother's with her family, and Dad, he's with his family as well.
Okay, well, God rest the two of them. Kathleen, thanks indeed. That's Kathleen Chute from Carrickmacross Cross. And Tom, completely different outcome with the DNA because the name was misused. Tom, thanks indeed. Joe at RT.ie. Thank you both.
Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
Joe Duffy.
Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
It's Tuesday, September 16th, 1941. It's in the middle of the Second World War. The emergency, as it was known here. The Germans were at the gates of Moscow, and in the Glen of Amal in Wicklow, the Irish Army, the Irish Defence Forces were trialling and working on explosives. An explosive device in a training exercise exploded prematurely, killing 15 men and injuring many, many others. And this story was brought to our attention last week by a bizarre episode which a man found during the lockdown. He discovered that his father, who was called Patrick Osborne, was down as one of the dead. And in fact, his family in Summerhill in Dublin were grieving him that evening after the military police told them that their father had been killed in this awful explosion. When this man walked in the hall door, or the door of the tenement, didn't have a hall door, the door of the tenement, much to the delight and indeed shock of him, because he didn't know they were marking his death, and his family. And it turned out the man who died was also called Osborne. He was Gunnar J. Osborne, and he was from 36 Summerhill. So this started this. People then contact us. Let's begin with Johnny O'Connor. Johnny, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joe.
And who were you related to in this 1941 explosion?
Joe,
and what do you know about it?
Well, Joe, my father-in-law, Patrick McNamara, he was a battery sergeant in McGee Barracks in Kildare. He's my wife's father.
Okay.
He was in that group of people who were being given a lecture by the engineer officer on the day in relation to a landmine.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the landmine, unfortunately, that nobody knew was alive. Of course, these demonstrations and exercises are normally done with duds.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Lieutenant McLaughlin of the Engineer Corps, who died in the incident, they were all around in a circle. And while giving the demonstration, unfortunately, the mine went off. And 16 of them were killed that day.
Oh, God.
My father-in-law, Patrick McNamara, who was there, he lost his eye and was badly, he got severe deafness.
Oh, God.
Now, there were only 4 survivors that day, Joe.
God.
And Patrick was one of them.
Right.
And 16 of us, as I said, lost their lives. Patrick McNamara was a Limerick man, Joe. It's a coincidence with Limerick winning the All-Ireland yesterday. He was a Limerick man. He was based in McGee Barracks in Kildare town.
And did you ever meet him?
Joe, my father-in-law lived with us here.
Okay, and how was he
When
after?
his wife Julia, they lived in Rowanville in Kildare. And when his wife Julia died in 1977, he decided that he'd come to Newbridge to live with us, my wife Rosario and myself.
Okay,
and
well done.
And he lived with us until he died almost.
And how was he after the...
Joe, he was... With the injuries that he sustained, and he was a very stern man. I mean stern, upright, not cross or anything like that. But he held himself like a good soldier would, standing upright. His dress and deportment was always very good. He after his injuries, he was seen in the Ioneer Hospital, and then he was in St. Bricken's Military Hospital in Dublin, and then then the General Military Hospital in the Curragh Camp. And after his medical treatment, he was medically discharged from the Defence Forces. And at that stage, the government at the time, or the Department of Defence, offered him a job as a switchboard operator in McGee Barracks, where he remained until he retired. He was living in Newbridge, as I said, with us. I used to bring him over to Kildare Barracks every morning, and I collect him at 5 o'clock. Now, I was in the Curragh Camp at the time I was serving.
Okay.
And so I collect him. But it's ironic, Joe, that the anniversaries, in the Glen. I heard your program last week, and that gentleman was talking about the anniversary, and was there a monument in the Glen? And there is a monument up there. And as I said in my letter to you, that John Boland was the Minister for the Environment at the time, TD, and his relation was involved in the blast. But thankfully, he wasn't injured or badly injured or anything like that. So in 1986, they unveiled a monument in the Glen of Amal.
And we have a little clip. We have a little clip of that day. Go ahead, Tommy.
And Joe Pat Kelly and C.S. Bonner were standing on a little hillock, and they says to me, "You're just right, Sergeant. I've no faith in those engineers." That was a remark that passed. And the next thing I heard the bang, and it was carried about 100 yards further, and I put my head to my back down the ground, I put up, and all I could see was a whole lot coming up. Now when I got up and went over, you didn't know who to render assistance to. It was an awful sight.
God. By the way, that report was done by the legendary Charlie Board, who's still going strong, thankfully. But did your father-in-law, did he ever talk about the day?
Joe, I was just thinking about this, that you might be asking me that question. He never mentioned it, never spoke about it, and we never spoke about it to him.
Wow.
And it's ironic when I think about it. We hear of all these soldiers who died or who were in the wars, let it be the war, First World War, Second World War, in Lebanon or anywhere else, Irish soldiers in Jadaville. They come back, but they never spoke about anything. Yeah. You know, it's remarkable.
And are there any plans? Because it's the 80th anniversary in a fortnight. Are there any plans? I know we live in COVID times, but even with social distance, are there any plans for a memorial?
Well, Joe, we were up there in 1986, my wife and I, and my father-in-law, Patrick.
This is in Donard, County Wicklow.
This was in Seskin Hill, in the Glen of Amal.
And do we know how is the memorial looked after? Is it?
Oh, well, as far as I know, Joe, it is, and I'd like to think it is by the staff of the Coolmooney camp.
Okay, well then hopefully someone will send us in a photograph. But you're saying there is a venue.
A photograph after we have our conversation.
Oh, do you? Good man. But there is a venue. There is an outdoor venue, and it would be suitable with regulations for a memorial. Would the families like to see a memorial on the 80th? I wonder.
Well, Joe, it's funny you say that as well, because when we were up there in 1986 and again on the 75th anniversary in 2011, I remember some friends of mine up there saying, "Sure, the next one won't be now till the 100th anniversary." So I don't know whether it's up to the Department of Defence.
But 100 means most of the relatives would have deceived. Would have passed
we
on.
won't even be around, Joe.
Okay, I know that. That audio featured Sergeant Richie Lennon. More after this break. Stay there, Johnny.
Thank you, Joe.
Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815. Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
We're talking about this explosion. I don't know if it's fair to say forgotten explosion, but it was the biggest single casualty death toll in the Irish Army since its foundation. I presume, I'm including the Civil War in that, but anyway, it was 15 men were killed in an accidental bomb explosion in the Glen of Amal. Now, Josephine Scullion Hardyman, your uncle, Sergeant Michael Scullion, was one of the fatalities.
That's correct, Joe, and he was from the Glens of Antrim, and there was another man from the north of Ireland killed in that explosion. He was a Lieutenant McLaughlin.
Yeah.
And when I heard your programme last week, I just heard the end of it. Mm-hmm. When you read out the names of the men who were killed, his address was given as Letterkenny. And that intrigued me because we never heard when we were growing up any information about having him ever being in Letterkenny. And my father, Patrick Scullion, he was in the Cavalry Corps, and Michael Scullion was in the Artillery Corps, and so there were two brothers stationed in the Curragh at that time together when Michael, one of them, was killed. And just recently on a local Facebook page up in Glenravel in County Antrim, we saw a lovely snippet on the Glens paper about the funeral.
Oh, you sent me that last week.
Oh, you saw that, yeah. And the interesting thing was that the flag and everything else that came with the coffin was taken off at the border. They weren't allowed. Those two men were not allowed a military funeral in the north. They received a civil funeral.
And did your father, who would be a brother of the deceased, did their family ever find out what happened? Like, did they know that the explosive was live?
We were always told that it was meant to be dud ammunition. And that it was live ammunition, and that man McLaughlin, I think my uncle was standing right beside him, Michael Scullion, and he.
Have you ever been to the spot where it happened, Joseph?
Oh yes, I've been. Well, first of all, we were all invited to that memorial
in '86,
garden in 1986, and it was a wonderful day because my father's my father's three sisters, who wouldn't have, had great connections here with the South, but always kept in touch with us, and they were really charmed to be invited to it, and we had a wonderful day. It was really, really good, and my father wasn't alive at the time, but my mother was. Okay.
And would you like to see a memorial on the 80th?
I would love to, but I would be in a position to find out, because I rang one of the local historians after your programme as well, who did a talk on that disaster about 2 or 3 years ago during Heritage Week, and he gave me the connections to find out.
Okay. Stay with us, Josephine. I want to bring in Oliver O'Neill. Oliver, your uncle was also killed. What was his name?
Yeah, hi Joe, and hello to your listeners. Yeah, my uncle was Thomas Oliver O'Neill, which is, I'm called after him. He was unfortunately one of the 16 killed on that day, but I mean, there was numerous others and a lot of people very badly injured that day, and like that, again, I would love to see an 80th commemoration. I would love to go to that. We weren't at the one in 1986, but I have all the details about it.
And what do you know about your uncle, Thomas Oliver O'Neill, your namesake?
He was 23 years of age. He was one of three brothers. He was the youngest, joined from civil service, and there was only two from Cork, himself, Lieutenant O'Neill and Lieutenant Brighton. They were the only two men from Cork, and they were both brought back to Cork and given funerals with full military honours. But my grandfather passed away 2 years later. He refused the option of a military grave. He wanted him buried in the family plot in Cork and St. Finbarrs. You could imagine it was a game changer for my family and all the other families.
And why did he refuse a military grave?
Well, look, I suppose you have to wonder. They were working on a mine that was live, and there's 25 pounds of explosive. It was designed to blow up tanks, so you could imagine the devastation.
Good God! And how was your grandfather? How was Thomas's father after the explosion?
Well, he passed away 2 years later. I would never have met him, but he passed away. He was we have all the paper clippings. We have all the information from what happened that day.
And you'd like to see a memorial or a service on the 80th? Okay, let me bring in Elaine O'Connor. Elaine, it's your grandfather who ended up severely disabled. You've been researching this.
Yeah, I've always had a very good interest in the Glen of Amal, the accident in 1941, because Patrick McNamara was my grandfather, and he lived with us for all of my small life.
And was there ever an inquiry into what happened?
I don't know, Joe, if there was. I don't know. I do know
Oliver, Oliver, sorry.
There was an inquiry, and it was considered accidental.
Okay. Sorry, Elaine, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, and I just know that there was very little help for the survivors, both financially and...
that's a pity.
Yeah, and emotionally as well. And I look back now, Joe, I'm in home care myself. I have a little home care company here in Newbridge, County Kildare. And I look back myself now and I see the help we give people who are struggling. And I look back now and I see how he did struggle. And I also see that I wouldn't have been surprised if back then, if he was assessed, he could have even suffered a little bit with post-traumatic stress disorder.
But you knew him, Elaine.
He lived with us. Yeah, he lived with us. I knew him very well.
And did he ever talk to you about the day?
He never, ever spoke to me about the day. The only thing he ever did, and we were very, very close, but the only thing he ever did was he had a glass eye. and he used to actually make fun of himself with the glass eye, you know, just to try.
Okay, we'll find out more about. I know you're all keen for the army to memorialise it again on the 80th in a couple of weeks.
I touched base over the weekend, Joe, with Cathal Barry here in Newbridge.
The TD,
yeah. He's the military man, and but I didn't get a response. So
so far we've a bit of time. We'll find out by tomorrow. I'm over time. Elaine O'Connor, Johnny O'Connor, Josephine Hardiman, Oliver Neal. First of all, condolences, by the way, on that awful tragedy. Back tomorrow, 1:45. Fergus Sweeney produced. Brenda Dunn, who's next?
Liveline on RTE Radio 1 with a Kia EV6. Inspire your senses. The fully electric EV6. For more, visit kia.com.
1850 715 815. Stays open until 3:15 p.m. or email joe@rte.ie.